If you're looking to take your healing to the next level, you've come to the right place. My name is David. I help people heal and awaken, and today I present to you the 10 most powerful healing exercises that I've ever tried. So before we jump into these exercises, I do encourage you to check out my video, Introduction to Shadow Work. That'll give you sort of a big picture understanding of what shadow work is, how it relates to awakening, and I do want to give you a quick summary before we get into the exercises. Shadow work is basically exploring the icky parts of our mind that we're afraid of, that we don't really want to look at. So what happens is when we experience a thought or a belief or an emotion that we don't really want to experience, or that we don't associate as being part of us, we create that distinction in our mind and sort of shove that shove that part of our consciousness metaphorically in the closet. It's like, when if you're cleaning your room and you shove all your clothes under your bed. That's basically what we're doing when we're creating a shadow. Instead of allowing these thoughts and emotions to flow freely as they would naturally, we are kind of storing them in the back of our minds because we're afraid of what they might mean about us. So shadow work is all about bringing light into the darkness. It's about bringing your consciousness into the unconscious parts of your mind, the things that you've shoved under the bed. And it's about bringing love into the things that we are afraid of, and ultimately discovering that the fear was hollow, that there was no fear, nothing to be afraid of in the first place. So without further ado, exercise number 1 is called Express Yourself. So this is one that comes straight from the book Shadows Before Dawn by Teal. This is an excellent book for shadow work. It has been instrumental in my healing process, and I highly recommend it for anyone doing shadow work. But this exercise, Express Yourself, this is all about expressing the repressed emotions and thoughts that you've sort of locked away in your mind and body. So the way you do this is you go to a place where you can be alone. I literally did this exercise last night in a parked car, and you ask yourself this series of questions. And your goal here is to get to the root of certain emotions and to express all of it so that there's nothing left unsaid, nothing left unfelt. So you basically go through this process, and I'll post these questions, the specific questions that Teal wrote. And so I'll pin these in a comment down below. But it's all about exploring the anger, and then the pain, and then the fear, and expressing all of that. And then eventually, once you do that, you kind of naturally come to an understanding, which is the next emotion to explore, and then to love. So this is a textbook example of bringing light into the darkness, because you're taking all of these parts of your mind that you've been repressing, all of these emotions that you've been repressing, possibly for years, possibly for decades, and bringing them out into the open for you to hear, letting them flow through your body rather than locking them away. And then ultimately that fear turns into love. And it's a really beautiful process. This is not a time to hold back while you're doing this exercise. That's why I recommend being alone while you do this, so you can scream, so you can cry, anything you need to do, anything you need to say. This is not a time to be nice or politically correct. This is a time for you to let it all out. And this can be incredibly healing. And that leads me to exercise number 2, which is similar. But instead of saying this out loud, you're going to be writing letters. So you can pick the people that are closest to you. You can pick your family, like your parents, your children, partners, ex-partners, anyone who's had a significant impact on your life, and especially anyone who's hurt you in the past, or people who you've hurt in the past. And you just want to write a letter to them, sort of expressing all of your grievances towards them, expressing all of your repressed emotions, even if you don't feel justified in feeling that way, even if you feel hatred for somebody in your life, and it's like, oh no, well, I shouldn't hate them because, they didn't know what they were doing. Just let it all out. And you can include that understanding in your letter, but it's really important to get in touch with the natural, authentic negative emotions that you're harboring. Otherwise, they'll still stay locked in your body because you're not allowed to feel them. That's kind of the point of these exercises, is allowing yourself to feel whatever is naturally there, not to rationalize the way that you're feeling and only feel what is rational to feel. That's exactly what creates the shadow in the first place. So, in addition to writing a letter to the people that are closest to you, you can also write a letter to yourself. And this can be really, really powerful. And you can make this, so there's a few ways you can do this, writing a letter to yourself. You can write a letter expressing all of your grievances to yourself, kind of expressing any hatred or any negative emotions that you harbor. So with all of these negative letters that you're writing to other people and to yourself, after you write them, I want you to read them aloud and burn them. These letters are not to be given to other people. These are only for you to completely express yourself. If you want to write letters to give to people, you can do that in a separate exercise. But for this exercise, just allow yourself to have the privacy to say whatever you need to say without judgment from others. That's very important. Because if you're constantly afraid of what other people are going to be thinking about you, or afraid of hurting other people while you're writing these letters, you're not going to be able to express yourself freely. So give yourself the space, give yourself the privacy to say whatever you need to say. So exercise number 3 is observing your mind through meditation. The first step to shadow work is always awareness. You can't heal a part of you that you don't know exists. So meditation is like the main pillar, or we'll say awareness is the main pillar to shadow work. Shadow work in its essence is all about increasing your level of consciousness, which means becoming more present, becoming more aware of the feelings in your body, becoming more aware of the thoughts in your mind. See, normally, what most people do is we identify with our minds. We have a thought, and we automatically assume, oh, that thought is us, rather than seeing ourselves as the observer of the thought. And this may seem very subtle, but this is a radical shift. So meditation is going to increase your ability to focus. There's many different kinds of meditation you can do. You can do a do-nothing meditation. You can do concentration. You can do body awareness, focus on the breath. Any of these things are going to be very helpful to increasing your consciousness and increasing your ability to stay present with your emotions and thoughts, which is the essence of shadow work. Because when you bring all of these subconscious processes into the light of your consciousness, all of the fear dissolves. That's exactly what's going on here. So tip number 4 is holotropic breathwork. So I'm not going to get into exactly how to do that here. There's plenty of videos on YouTube that will explain that to you. But what this does is you're essentially hyperventilating, and you're flooding your body with oxygen. And what that does is all this oxygen in your body activates all of this latent tension in your body, tension that comes from years of emotional and thinking patterns and resistance. So, when I do this, I experience a ton of tension in my hands and my jaw. So my hands will literally cramp up like this. My jaw will literally feel like it's wired shut. Like I can't even talk normally when I'm doing this. And it helps me realize that, all of this tension in my body is actually the result of emotional patterns and the result of resistance in my life. So this is coming at the shadow from the physical and the emotional aspects. So one tip I will give you for this is go ahead and do a Google search for free online breathwork. I first started doing breathwork by myself, and it was useful, but I wasn't able to stick with it long enough to actually get the full results of it. I would go for 30 minutes or 35 minutes or so, and I would sort of quit because in my experience, I come up against this wall of resistance when I'm doing the breath work. It's like, it starts to hurt and I start to get really uncomfortable. I'm kind of moving, thrashing around like, oh, I just want to stop. And what I discovered is that just on the other side of that resistance is the release. You're not fighting against anything, but what you're healing is that resistance that you're facing. And when you let yourself feel into the resistance, that resistance becomes love. And I've experienced amazing releases and amazing insights. So I highly recommend you try this one. And then, so exercise number 5. This is something I sort of came up with on my own, and I call it active expression. So this is sort of a meditation. You can sit down or lie down, and I want you to just become aware of any thoughts that you're having, any emotions in your body right now, and allow any negative emotions that you're experiencing to come into your consciousness and sort of hang out there for a second. So this is different than dwelling on negative emotions, because we're actively trying to heal it here. And the goal here is to allow these emotions to express themselves through you physically. So if you experience anger, allow yourself to tense up. Allow yourself to tense your hands and your jaw, and allow yourself to make noises. You almost let yourself make like primal noises that sort of come naturally to you. Because we naturally do express emotions through our voice. You can think of like a toddler who wants another cookie, and his mom's like, "No, you've had enough cookies for the day." He might be like, "Argh!" Right? It's just like a natural process to express ourselves. But it's also not socially normal to growl at people. So you can imagine that it's hard for us to release these emotions when we're in these social situations. And we practice resisting these emotions over and over and over again, and it becomes our normal. So we have years, maybe decades of pent up emotions that we didn't allow ourselves to let out. So this is all about just sitting there with the intention of allowing yourself to express your negative emotions through your voice. Again, I recommend going somewhere where you can have some solitude, so you can express yourself without worrying what other people are going to be thinking about you growling like a caveman or something. So exercise number 6 is to have a conversation with yourself. So there's really no specific structure you need for this. In fact, I think one of the benefits of this is that it can be whatever you want it to be. So you can go like look in the mirror, or you can just kind of sit there and talk out loud. But this is about getting your thoughts out of your head and out into the open. You can also write down the conversation, whatever works for you, really. But a lot of times what I notice is I'll have some repeating thought pattern in my mind, and this pattern will be very destructive, and it'll feel very scary and very real. And it's like, I hate that that's there. I don't want to look at that. I don't want to deal with that. But then if you actually allow yourself to bring it up in a conversation with yourself, you'll realize like, oh, that's ridiculous. Like, how could I ever believe that? How could I believe something so silly? So there's a lot of value in just hearing your thoughts out loud. And I do notice some resistance to this, because there's always this thought that comes up that's like, oh, only crazy people talk to themselves. But, we're all a little crazy. So I give you permission to do this exercise for the purpose of healing. Number 7 is to personify fear. So this is actually an exercise I tried for the first time during the actualize.org life purpose course. So this is all about investigating your fears. So for me, this played out in a really interesting way. So I noticed that there was this fear of expressing myself, fear of putting myself out there, especially on video. This is like honestly like my greatest fear. So it's interesting that I even want to do this. But I had a fear of expressing myself, and I still do, and speaking my truth and being myself. So what I did was I linked this up to an image in my mind of a monster. And I imagined bringing this monster to the kitchen table under the lights and asking, like, why are you here? Like, what purpose are you serving? Because our fear, although it may seem irrational, it's actually here to protect us. It's always here to serve us in some way. Even if it is a roundabout way that's neurotic, that's not actually not serving us. It was created for the purpose of helping ourselves. And it was interesting because I immediately linked the fear of expressing myself to this blue monster that came from a nightmare when I was 3 years old. And this is literally one of the earliest memories I have. So it must have been pretty traumatic for me to remember it for 20 years. And so, I sat down with this monster in my mind at the table under the lights, and I asked, like, why are you here? And the response I got was, well, I'm here to protect you. Because if you express yourself, if you speak up, then that puts you in danger of being punished. And so I'm really just here to protect you. And it was like an aha moment, like, oh, like that's why I'm so afraid to express myself, because I associate expressing myself with punishment. I also thought it was interesting that the monster was blue, and that correlates with the throat chakra, which correlates to expressing yourself and speaking your truth. So coincidence, maybe, maybe not. But really, really powerful exercise. Hypnotherapy in general is extremely powerful. It's about doing these visualizations, kind of diving back into your past and resolving some of these old fears and traumas. So for this, you can just do a Google search for hypnotherapy, and then you can even include the specific topic you want to heal, like fear or shame, and find some really amazing meditations and hypnotherapy sessions. So tip number 8, I call the mirror of relationships. So first, to understand this exercise, we need to understand that our experience of the external world is just a reflection of the internal. In truth, the internal and the external are one. But this is a really helpful framework for understanding how we create our reality. So we can look at the relationships of the people that are closest to us, so our friends, family, significant others. And I want you to be really honest with yourself and acknowledge the parts of this relationship or even aspects of this person that you dislike, or things that bother you, things that annoy you, things that get under your skin. And once you're aware of those things, I want you to ask yourself a really important question, which is, how do I see these things in myself? Something I talk about a lot is judgment. Every single time we make a judgment about somebody else, it is always a projection of the way that we judge and deny ourselves. In this way, judgment works like a mirror if we're conscious enough. If we choose to examine our judgments rather than identify with our judgments as the truth and see them for what they are, we see that they're just a reflection of us. So this can be an incredible, incredible tool for awareness and give us sort of a direction in where we need to go in order to actually heal our shadow and integrate it. Speaking of mirrors, number 9 is mirror work. So this is all about choosing to deliberately show yourself some love. So this can be really, really helpful for healing a negative, shameful body image. So this is an issue I've dealt with for like 15 years. And it's really simple the way this exercise works. You just stand in front of the mirror and just look at your body, look at yourself in the eyes, look at all the different aspects of yourself, your nose, your teeth, your cheeks, your chest, your stomach, and just look, don't say anything, just give yourself a second to take it all in, and then notice any judgments that come up. Like for me, a lot of times when I look in the mirror, I'll look at my stomach and think, oh man, I'm overweight. And I'll judge myself for that, and I'll kind of beat myself up for that. Or I'll look at my face and say, oh, I don't like this about my face. And just notice all these little subtle things and just allow yourself to fully accept all of you. Put your attention specifically on the parts of your body that you criticize and just fully accept and love those parts of your body exactly as they are. And this can be incredibly healing. And you don't have to limit mirror work to just your physical appearance. You can also, there's also value to sort of looking yourself in the eye and acknowledging and loving certain aspects of yourself that you tend to judge or deny. So the final exercise is something called radical forgiveness. So this is all about forgiveness on the highest level. And if you watched my introduction to shadow work video, you'll probably remember that forgiveness is absolutely key to shadow work. Forgiveness is all about choosing to let go of the poison in your mind and body that's making you miserable. It's not about whether the other person deserves your forgiveness. It's not about anything but your own healing. This is about choosing to let go of what's no longer serving you and surrendering to the truth and surrendering to love. So the reason it's called radical forgiveness is because it's happening from sort of a spiritual level. I forgot to mention, this is a specific exercise created by a man named Colin Tipping. So he wrote books about the subject, and he also created these really helpful worksheets that help you work through this radical forgiveness process. I've done many of those. There's also a radical self-forgiveness that is extremely powerful. So I'll link those below. But the reason it's radical is because it's happening from a spiritual perspective. So you go through the emotions, you allow yourself to get in touch with them and express your thoughts, and then you start to understand that all of these things were ultimately your choice. From the highest level, you are creating everything. And it's about understanding that every bad thing that's happened to you, every thing that you beat yourself up for is all a gift. It's all part of this lesson to yourself. And it's all ultimately love. So it's about realizing total forgiveness, because there was never anything to forgive in the first place. There was never any wrong done. Which, of course, is radical, and a lot of people will disagree with that. That's why it's called radical forgiveness. You can sit here and listen to these exercises all day long, but ultimately that's not going to help you. What's really going to help you is actually doing these. If you sit down and actually do one of these exercises, that'll be more valuable than watching 20 videos. I don't care how great they are. The best way that I can help you is by giving you the tools and hopefully inspiring you to actually use them. So that's my wish for you. And I challenge you right now, after this video, don't watch another video. Actually choose one of these exercises. Choose the one that resonates the most with you and try it out. Just do it, see what happens. And I know it's scary. I know I've been doing this I'm doing shadow work for about a year now. And every single time I'm about to do it, I'm resistant to it. I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this. Exactly. Because that's how the shadow works. That's how it perpetuates itself. It only exists when you don't look at it. Because when you acknowledge the unconsciousness, it becomes conscious. When you acknowledge the fear, it becomes love. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you, my friend. I've got more content coming soon, so if you want to check that out, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and consider giving this video a like. And I appreciate you so much. Have a beautiful day, my friend.